Yo, welcome to another installment of Noob Chess Analysis. Today we have a London match, and the theme is all about identifying and exploiting your opponent's weaknesses. Before we get into the match though, I've been starting to think about a new series for this channel. It's going to be focused on analyzing subscriber games. So if you're a subscriber and you're around my level, 1200 or below, anything below is great. I don't care how low you are. Go ahead and link the game in a comment section below. I'll take a look, and if it's interesting, I'll make a video for it for this channel. All right, so let's dig in here. We got a London, just the common London opening. And one thing I've been doing lately is delaying the development of this knight, usually because this bishop will come down and pin it to my queen. And yes, that can be, you can develop your own bishop and unpin the queen, and yes, that's all good. But it's very passive, and it's not the play style I like. I like to do the pinning. I like to have initiative. So I've been just waiting to see, because my opponent is much more likely to develop out to f5 instead of f4 if I just wait to develop my knight. Another thing that's come up is this move. So the move from c2 to c4, which is, when you think about the London, it's usually c3 is the move, right? Your basic London structure. Now, this move came from a video series on the London that I watched by a YouTuber named Hanging Pawns. I'll put a link to the series below. Definitely check it out. It was super helpful to me when I was just starting out with the London. The basic idea is, if your opponent fails to take the initiative and push the pawn to c5 to attack the center, then you should take the initiative and play c4. And it's a strong move. If the opponent takes, you get free development with your bishop with tempo. So if you want to say this is no longer the London, and now it's transposing to the Queen's Gambit, I've gotten some comments about that, I would just say, yeah, you're probably right, but that's okay. It is what it is. So I like to play it. It's an aggressive move, and I'm going to continue to play it. So all about identifying weakness. This video is about identifying weaknesses, and one thing to think about when this bishop moves is that it weakens the b7 square. This is an undefended pawn now, which is important to think about when you're playing the London, because you often have this open b3 square that you can move your queen to attack that weakness. So keep that in mind. Now we can also identify another weakness from this pawn move. So the pawn moves to e6, and it's not so much of a weakness, but a limitation of this bishop now. So this bishop can no longer go back. It can no longer help unpin this knight. And if we want to take it at some point, if we develop our knight, we have the ability to. So we can develop out here and attack the bishop. Yes, this bishop can move down, but you should play your f-pawn, and it will often go back, and you can capture it. Yes, it does open the h-file, though. When they recapture with the pawn, the h-file will be open with this rook looking down. So you have to remember that. If you don't remember that, you will be punished for it. But just keep in mind that this bishop will now stay on the king side of the board. So we identified the weakness on b7. I like to attack it. I like to attack it because my opponent has to be pretty precise here. And if my opponent makes an incorrect move, it can basically shatter his entire position. The correct move is knight to a5, where it is not only defending the b7 square, but also attacking my queen. So my queen has to move here. The best move is to attack this. It's currently hanging, right? There's nothing defending this knight, and it's with a check. So we're checking the opponent's king. The best move here is just to block the check with the pawn, and this also opens up the queen to defend the knight on a5. That's not what happened, though. What happened was my opponent pushed down the pawn to b6, which is a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster because that pawn was doing a job. It was defending the c6 square. And when you think about c6, it's a pretty tender spot because it can actually only have two defenders. There's only two defenders that it can potentially have because this bishop can't go back. So the two defenders are that pawn that was there and this queen. It's important because I have 2 attackers on this side of the board that are in position to cause some serious pain. Another weakness of my opponent's is this bishop is not developed, so he is not ready to castle yet. So there's a lot of weaknesses here, and it's time to exploit them. So the move here is to put the pin on. And there's really no response to this. There's no good response to save my opponent's life here. And really the best move that he can make is actually to play the bishop down, and that prepares to castle. Because really all my opponent can do now is think about king safety. Now from here, obviously I can just take, and my opponent will have to basically block. You're going to want a castle, so you want to block it with the knight, and then I get the rook. Oh, yes. Order of operations. Take the bishop first, and then he'll take with the pawn, and then you get the rook, and then he'll clear out your bishop. But that's not what happened. My opponent actually made another mistake by trying to protect this. He was trying to unpin this with his queen. The problem with this is I have a queen here, right? So I can just push my queen up, and when I recapture, he can't recapture back because I'll just eat his queen with check, and then I'll get the rook also. So that would be brutal. He castles, which is also a very large mistake because now his queen is in the way and this pawn is undefended. So you got the a7 pawn just sitting there, and once I take that, I'm staring his queen down, his king down. So you obviously take the piece here, and now you're threatening to take his queen. And the best move here is actually for the king to go back and defend the a7 square, because if I take that, it's just game over, right? I'm just attacking it, and it's just a huge problem. So my opponent didn't like that, though. He just moved over. He didn't want to lose his queen, which is very typical at this level. Like, losing your queen feels like the end of the world. So obviously he's going to move that, even though that means an unstoppable checkmate to come. And really there's nothing he can do about ending this game. All right, so that's it. Identify the weakness, exploit it, put pressure on it, see how your opponent reacts. If they react incorrectly, take full advantage of it and crush them. All right. Good seeing you. Check me out on YouTube, twitch.tv/YoBeebs. All right, catch you later.